Whatever the mind of man can conceive and bring itself to believe, it can achieve. And in this video, we're gonna go over why if you decide, just literally make the decision that everything is gonna work out in your favor, it will. And we're actually going to look at this from a data-driven standpoint alongside some other information to show you why this is the case, why it is that elites and those in prominent families were aware of this and actually use essentially this at the highest level to achieve the many things that they do achieve. Essentially, if you can expand your ability to conceive, to be able to imagine, to dream, to envision higher and higher and higher, and also expand your ability to believe higher and higher and higher, the amount you can achieve is essentially limitless. And so we're also going to go over how you can do this in steps, because it's not about trying to believe something you can't truly believe right now, or conceive of something that's outside of your reach as of this moment. So we'll go over how to work your way up while achieving things at the level you're currently at, so that you can conceive and believe at higher levels, which of course, like mentioned, will help you to achieve more and more and more. And this is not just conjecture, this is not just something I'm saying that doesn't exist. I've used this in my own life to do incredible things. We just moved into a dream home, for example. I have many clients doing this to achieve their dreams and their visions and their DCAs, essentially helping them to use this concept, a concept that the elites use and teach basically their kids, and they learn when they're young so that they master this over time. And you're gonna learn how this works today and also why it works. So let's go a little more into why when you decide everything will work out in your favor, or really whatever you believe will come to pass. You see, we have to understand that we don't live in a physical universe per se, right? In fact, the physical matter reality makes up a tiny percentage of our reality. If you were to take the building blocks of physical matter that we refer to as the atoms, and you were to look at them at the deepest level, you would actually find that the atom itself is non-physical. It's not even physical, even though when built together, it creates these things that seem physical. The trees around here, the camera, the whiteboard, all of it. Yet again, if you were to look at any atom within this whiteboard, myself, the camera, or yourself, you would see and observe that it is actually made up of 99.9+% empty space and energy, and only the rest of that tiny fraction physical matter reality. This is why we get sayings that if you were to remove all the empty space and energy from every person on the planet, you would be left with enough physical stuff that would fit into a single sugar cube, right? That is how physical our reality really is. And so it's to understand we live in an energetic universe. And this is gonna tie in importantly to why we get what we believe. So we live in an energetic universe. You know, like Tesla said, if you wanna know the secrets to the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. He didn't say think in terms of physicality, right? He didn't say think in terms of the actions you take. He said energy, frequency, and vibration. And he also mentioned this towards manifestation, I believe, as well. And again, you get other famous physicists like Max Planck, Niels Bohr, who I believe said everything that we regard as physical in and of itself cannot be regarded as physical, meaning it's not actually physical. All the things we think are physical of their very nature are non-physical. Now, why is this important? Because if we understand we're in a non-physical reality, mainly, and that this physical reality we find ourselves in really comes from that non-physical reality, but even the physical reality is changeable. It operates from the principle of vibration, meaning everything, nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. Everything is changing, essentially. Then what determines reality? What determines, even more specifically, your reality? Well, ultimately, you see this down there, but the real answer here is conscious, or a conscious observer. Or another way of saying that is you. A conscious observer determines in which direction, out of an infinite amount of possibilities, reality will take shape. And again, this denser rate of vibration we call the physical. And we'll get into what that means in a little bit. But understand that you actually are shaping your reality from this sea of possibilities. Now, the reason we know this was there was a very famous experiment done, I believe in the 1920s or 1930s, I think even further back, really early versions of it were done. But this is known as the double slit experiment. And many people have heard of this now in recent years. But this was game-changing when it came to understanding how our reality operates and science in general and what direction it went, right? Even though materialism was still popularized in the mainstream for very political, we could say, reasons. But the double slit experiment basically revealed that reality is malleable and mainly non-physical. And what the double slit experiment ultimately showed was that a conscious observer has influence over reality and how a wave function, which just think of as energy, frequency, vibration, or potentiality, collapses into a particle, which you can think of the building blocks of physical matter reality. So essentially, how the non-physical moves or goes into the physical and what direction it goes to, right? We learned this through the double slit experiment. And in fact, I'm going to play you a clip right now from what's called the simulation hypothesis that will explain this in a little more detail to go over what the double slit experiment did and how it changed our understanding of how reality operates.
Prior to observation, matter does not seem to exist. Matter seems to be the result of an interaction between consciousness and waves of potential. This has been demonstrated repeatedly in ever more precise versions of the double slit experiment, from the 1920s right up through the present. To understand the double slit experiment, we first need to know how particles behave. If we shoot small objects at a detector, we will see a clump pattern form where they went through the slit and impacted. If we add a second slit, we would expect to see a second clumping duplicated to the right. Now let's look at waves. The waves go through the slit and radiate out, striking the back wall with the most intensity directly in line with the slit. The line of brightness on the back screen shows that intensity. This is similar to the clump pattern. But when we add the second slit, something different happens. When the top of one wave meets the bottom of another, they interfere and cancel each other out. This results in an interference pattern on the back wall. Where the waves reinforce each other, they are at the highest intensity, the bright lines. And where they cancel each other out, there is nothing. So, when we fire objects through two slits, we get two clump patterns. But with waves, we get an interference pattern. An electron can be seen as a very small bit of matter. And when a stream of electrons is fired through one slit, they behave like small objects, forming a single clump pattern. So if we fire these bits of matter through two slits, we should get two clump patterns. But we don't. We get an interference pattern. We fired particles through, but we get a pattern like they're waves, not like little objects. How can pieces of matter create an interference pattern like waves? It doesn't make sense. At first, physicists thought that the electrons were bouncing off each other to create this interference pattern. So, in 1961, Klaus Johnson at the University of Tübingen in Germany modified the experiment to fire the electrons through one at a time. This way, there is no possibility of them bumping into and interfering with each other. But again, the interference pattern was seen. Physicists were perplexed by this. So they further modified the experiment to get to the bottom of the mystery. They put a measuring device at one slit to see which one the particle actually went through. But when the electrons were being this closely observed, they went back to behaving like little objects and produced a clump pattern, not an interference pattern. Somehow, the act of observation meant that they only went through one slit, not both. The electrons seemed to decide how to behave as if they were aware of being watched. How could this possibly be the case? Could the presence of a conscious observer be influencing the experiment?
Consciousness is information. It's an information field. Okay? It's data.
In 1978, physicist John Wheeler proposed a new way of doing the double slit experiment that might finally reveal what's really happening. He proposed what is called the delayed choice experiment, in which the decision of whether or not to observe the particles isn't made until after they've gone through the slits, but before they've impacted the detector. This animation is highly simplified, but you get the idea. Here comes the light, It travels through the double slit barrier as waves. The waves are past the slits but haven't yet hit the detector. And here comes the scientist. His eyes are closed. He's delaying his choice to make this an observed experiment. And then because what was found was that at the moment of decision to observe, the waves became particles. And not only that, but they actually made a record of themselves as having traveled through the slits as particles. Yes, you heard me. Deciding to run the observed experiment causes the waves to become particles, and this causal force extends backwards in time.
Our choice of what experiment to do determines the prior state of the electron.
Running the experiment unobserved does not cause this effect.
So what the double slit experiment really revealed was how malleable and influential reality actually is when it comes to a conscious observer or a conscious observer and how they can manipulate or influence reality. And again, you are a conscious observer. Now understand, this doesn't just mean the observations through your physical eyes. Remember that reality is mainly non-physical, not physical. So a lot of this is actually happening in the non-physical realm, for example, like your thoughts, your feelings, and similar things of that nature. And this is why when you truly believe something will work out, it does, because you are collapsing the wave function of possibility into more concrete reality, or what we call concrete reality, to put it more in that direction that everything will work out for you. And this is the secret of, for example, elites and people in the know and people who are reality creation masters or those who worked with a mentor. They understand this. And that is why they always believe things will work out. And they have tools and practices that help them with this, because they understand that if they truly believe that, if they truly think that everything is going to work out in their favor, it will, because they are collapsing the wave function of possibility of the non-physical into the physical. They're collapsing that wave function into particle in that direction. And so when you truly believe something will work out for you, you are collapsing the wave function in your favor to create what it is you actually want. Now, understand, most people are doing this in a way that's disadvantageous for themselves. They're collapsing the wave function in directions they don't want. So most people are thinking, oh, nothing ever works out for me. You know, this isn't going to work. And they're usually on the negative end of the spectrum. They're thinking that way, they're feeling that way, they're acting that way. And therefore, from potentiality, that is what they are bringing into their life. They are bringing in that negativity, which is then causing things to not work out for them. But if you talk to someone, for example, who's incredibly successful, having used these principles, maybe who is quote unquote elite, you know, whatever you want to call them, we just use that so you know what I'm talking about here, or is from a prominent family, you'll notice that there is this air of confidence about them, that they know everything will work out because they're aware of this. They are trained in this. They learn this from a young age. They don't get the same schooling a lot of us did in the public schools, which teaches none of this. In fact, the public school usually helps us to feel less confident in ourselves, which causes us to make worse decisions, think worse, and everything else, which causes us to use this in a disadvantageous way. But because a conscious observer creates your reality, again, you, in what direction you move your thoughts, your feeling, and everything else, when you truly believe something will work out, and everything works out in your favor, for example, that you're a good luck generator, for example, which is a great affirmation, that is exactly what begins to happen for you. Okay, continuing on, how does this work more as you're observing, as you're cultivating the inner world, which I'll explain what that means. How long does this take before you start seeing physical changes? Well, in some of my coaching and some of my groups, sometimes people come in and start seeing change within a couple of days, a week, at least start seeing some changes, and then greater and greater changes over time. So we'll put a few of those up that happen pretty instantaneously or after a little bit of time, right? But it will vary for each person, but ultimately, when you are using the inner observation, right? When you are observing certain things inwardly, after enough time, they will start to manifest. Oh, that's a terrible clock. They will start to manifest outwardly, because the inner leads to the outer, or the outer follows the inner after enough time and what's known as particle flow. right? Because you have to understand, if you're all over the place with what you're observing, if you are observing in the sense of you're observing one thing, then the next thing, then the next thing, then the next thing, and your thoughts and your thinking and your feeling is crazy and chaotic, you're not going to manifest much at all in the direction you want because it has to be concentrated. And the reason for this is because the physical world is what's known as a denser rate of vibration. And so what I want you to imagine is that the inner and outer world are actually connected. They're of a like kind. Remember what I said about the physical world also being mainly empty space and energy, meaning it's the same thing as energy, just presenting itself a different way because it's a denser rate of vibration. That is the difference. But if I was to look at these trees, this board, or anything in here, I would notice that it's also energy. That is what it's made up of. And again, not this physical stuff we believe it is. It's just denser and has more particle flow or concentration in a particular direction, which has allowed for this, what we call physical stuff, to appear. Meaning, if you want to create new physical stuff, you have to focus on certain things and observe certain things inwardly in the inner world. This represents spirit or energy. You do that long enough, and it starts collapsing the wave function into the outer world, into particle. And so you need enough particle flow of collapsing the wave function in a particular direction so they collapses it into particle, which allows it to come into your outer. And this is why you can't just think positively a little bit and expect massive changes. You can't just, do one meditation session and expect it to absolutely change the game from you. Now, you might get an insight and awareness or something in that meditation that helps you keep moving forward with things, and that's amazing. So in that case, it did help you. But it is that consistency over time, that repetition of doing this and observing particular things that allows you to collapse the wave function and gain what's known as particle flow to create new results in your outer. And it is essential that we create particle flow in the direction we want to go if we want to create in our life. And so, for example, with what we're talking about here, like believing that it's going to happen and it will, you have to do that not just once, not just twice, but this has to be a conviction. When you truly believe something, you're pretty unfaltering when it comes to that. You don't falter, you don't waver when it comes to that belief. Otherwise, it's not really a belief or a conviction. And again, I'm going to go over a way you can do this because you might be saying, well, I want these things, but I can't believe it. I don't have the confidence to get those things. Well, we'll cover how you can gain that confidence as well so that you can make this work. But understand, this is how it's working at a deeper level. Everything's of a like kind and connected, but you have a higher rate of vibration that's more instantaneous, like your thoughts, like your feelings in this kind of non-physical realm, or what we refer to as non-physical. And then you have what we call the physical, which is a denser rate of vibration and therefore requires a lot of focus and particle flow, meaning consistent observations in the inner world to create the desired reality you're looking for. But don't get it twisted. You are a conscious observer who is creating your reality one observation at a time. And if you can, and you absolutely can, focus those observations in a very particular direction, a more positive direction, a direction towards a goal, whatever else it is, then you will start seeing the effects of that, or the wave function collapsing into your outer, where events, opportunities, people, circumstances, and so on will start coming into your life that match those observations you've been making inwardly. And again, when we say observations, we mean, what are you entertaining? Are you thinking good thoughts that support what you're trying to do consistently? Are you feeling good most of the time, or do you delve into the negative stuff a lot of the time? Again, it's not right or wrong, but both of those things are going to have different effects. Remember, whatever you observe in that way will be created dependent on what is your, we'll say, dominant observations. Meaning, what are you observing most of the time? There's a reason, for example, there's quotes like, you become what you think about most of the time, because what you're thinking about is what you are observing, meaning what you are collapsing the wave function of possibility into, because you are focused and dwelling on that more often than not than other things. So energy gathers and builds towards that thing and eventually collapses the wave function after enough time into the realm of time and space known as the physical world. An analogy I really like is that of the garden. Think of your inner world like a garden that if you maintain and make thrive and make abundant for a long enough period with good thoughts, with focus, with concentration, with particle flow in the direction you want, will eventually be reproduced in the outer world to match it. But you have to maintain the garden long enough. If your inner garden has a ton of weeds, if it has a lot of of things that don't synergize with each other, then what's going to be produced in the outer world is that confusion, is that lack of synergy, is that chaos, is that incoherence. But if you have an incoherent inner garden and you maintain it, you cultivate it, you feed it with the thoughts it needs, the feelings it needs, the inspired actions it needs from that place, then you will see that collapse into your outer physical world through, again, basically in an unexpected way. It's almost always how it works. It's unexpected or out of left field, but it will absolutely happen because you're a conscious observer observing your reality into existence. Now, I'm going to give you the strategy here you can use in order to be able to conceive and believe what's in your range or sweet spot, rather than thinking you need to go and do what most people do, which is why it doesn't work, something that's beyond your ability to believe right now. Because for this to work, we have to satisfy the concept we talked about earlier, which is you have to believe it and conceive it to achieve it. If you can't believe it, if you can't conceive it, you can't think of it, you can't envision it, you cannot achieve it for the most part. But that belief part is so significant, because whether you believe you can or can't, either way you're right. We've all heard that saying, and it's very true. And so the idea isn't we need to force belief and be like, I should believe I can make this much, I should believe I can have this relationship or whatever, when clearly that's not something you truly believe without doubt. So if you go, I want this amount, but there's doubt with it, here is what we do. And I've gone over this before, but I call this the ladder technique. And this works so sensationally well, because what this is going to do, remember, our goal is we want to generate particle flow. And when you generate particle flow, you will build what you've all heard of, but we call momentum. And in this case, energetic momentum. And understand, energetic momentum builds very, very quickly. So if you're engaging particle flow, think of it like a laser hitting a particular point of where your observations are going. That energy builds exponentially and quickly the longer the laser points in the direction you have it pointed. If it turns on and off all the time, the energy never builds. If it points here, but then here, and then here, and then here, then energy never builds. But if you maintain that particle flow, you gain a massive level of momentum, which allows you to increase your belief and ability to conceive quickly, and also what you can achieve. So let's say you're here on this rung of the ladder, and you want to be, even like, let's make this bigger. You want to be basically up here. This is where your goal is, right? This is the thing that you maybe in the beginning go, this is what I'm going to decide to do, and that's what I want. And that's fantastic. And that's good, because that means you can conceive this, right? You can see it, you can conceive it, so you have the first step down. However, if you can't believe it because your level of belief is down here, then it's detrimental for us to try and pull this. Because along as you go up, you're just going to be doubting yourself the whole way. You're not going to believe it. And now, even worse, what you're going to think about when you're trying to do this is that you can't do it. So what do you start creating? What are you now observing when you are going for something you don't actually believe deep down you can do? It's not like, oh, it's a neutralizing effect. It's actually a negative effect, because if you go for a certain amount of money, for example, let's say it's $10,000 a month, because that's a common one people want to hit, right? And let's say you're not really in a belief zone to do that, but that's the goal you set. Every time you then look at that goal and doubt comes up, you start thinking about the lack of money you currently have. You start thinking about not being able to do it. And so now what are you doing with the power of your observation, and what are you now collapsing into the physical? More of that. And you're creating more power and more particle flow over those beliefs. And that is why it is so crucial we do this, because if you try and force belief and don't grow it naturally and organically, you're going to be going in circles over and over again. If you've been trying to hit a similar amount or the same amount for years upon years, this is probably what you find yourself in. You've had a goal and it's been years, even many months, and you're not any closer. This is one of the reasons why. And so we know we want to get here, and that's great. That's the dream. That's what you conceive. That's like your next big thing that you want to do. That's great. That's your conception. That's your visualization. That's what you've envisioned. Fantastic. But you're here. Well, which one of these rungs can you truly believe fully that you can hit next? And you just choose that. So let's say it's only one rung up because your belief isn't so high right now. So we don't aim for that, even though we know we're on the ladder that leads us to this. We start using this whole process you're learning about to believe in this thing and go, absolutely, I can achieve that, right? And so because you believe you can do it, you will achieve it if you just keep doing everything and doing the work and trusting the process. Now, here's a magical thing that happens when you do this. Once you climb the ladder one rung up, you can think of it like you're now stronger, which gives you a higher range of what you can aim for. So you may notice that once you hit here, you don't want to go one rung up. You believe you can go two, maybe even 2.5 rungs up. So imagine there's a rung there, just to stay in line with the analogy. So imagine you think you can get there now and you fully believe it. Because you believe it, you will achieve it. You've conceived it, you believe it, you will achieve it. By the way, this is what Napoleon Hill deemed as the sweet spot when it came to goal setting. And if you hit the sweet spot, this is when you generate amazingly powerful particle flow that allows you to create in your life. And look at how close you're now to your goal, and you may even find that from here, you're able to go directly here. And this can all happen in a relatively short amount of time if you follow this process, where if you do this, you are almost certain to never get there, no matter how long you focus on this. Again, it's like you're trying to reach 20 rungs up, and you're on the ladder, and you can't reach it. No matter how hard you try from where you're at, you just can't reach it. And if you're just sitting here reaching up for this 20 rungs up that you want to get to, do you make any progress? Are you getting any closer? You know, you actually might tire out and slip further down the ladder because you got your arm up like this and your other one starts getting tired. So it actually has a negative effect a lot of the time. And like I said, what are you observing when you're in this state? But if you instead go, okay, this is within reach, I believe this, and you pull yourself up, now you're closer. And now you've gotten stronger. And imagine you can reach even higher now and you pull yourself up. And as you pull yourself up, you are creating this very powerful momentum and particle flow. The laser is nonstop, just going again and again and again. And I've experienced this for financial goals I've had and believing those, for goals in my business, for goals in my life in general, when I did it in this way. And I'm telling you, this can work so incredibly fast. I've seen it in myself. I've seen it in people I work with. When we do it this way, it works so fast because it taps into the idea of belief. And when you truly believe something, again, the elites know this, the most successful people know this, when you truly believe it, you will achieve it. So now you have the process on how to do this that we just went over, why it works and everything else, that when you decide something will work out and you truly believe it, it will. Now here are a few things that are gonna just help you, additional tools, they're gonna help you in those moments of doubt to kind of dispel the doubt, right? Because sometimes something will just come up and you know, no, I do believe this, but something's just knocking me a little off course. And we call these essentially amalgams. I like to also call them storm breakers. Storm breakers because maybe a little bit of chaos is coming up and you want to make sure your laser beam stays pointed in the direction you want it. And so this is basically sayings like everything always works out in my favor. The universe has my back. Things of this nature that you can use in the moment to kind of get you out of a rut or get you out of an energy that's not serving you. Again, when we notice ourselves observing in the direction we don't want, it is paramount that we recover as soon as we can. Again, you will do this sometimes. Don't think you have to always have the laser beam on pointing. It's again, you get what you think about most of the time. Even if you get to the tipping point of 51% of the time you're observing in the direction you want, utilizing what you've learned today, you will see amazing effects. Some of the people in my group have talked about how they've done some of the stuff imperfectly, which we all do to some degree, and have yet still gotten phenomenal results. And then over time, you get even better, which leads to even more phenomenal results, right? So don't get neurotic with this because then what are you observing, for example? It's just about doing this to the best of your ability and being able to recover in those moments, and amalgams is what's going to help with that in a very big way. Again, I really like the one, it'll be this or something better, or everything is unfolding in my favor. We'll pop up a few others on screen that you can use, you can create your own, but you want to really come to these when you notice that you're observing in a direction you don't want, something is hooking you, or whatever else, so that your laser beam, again, of focus, of particle flow, of observation, is focused more in the direction you want, rather in something you don't want to create in the inner garden, which eventually again leads to the outer garden. And a saying I absolutely love, which has helped me to manifest and create so much for myself, I was just discussing this in my group the other day on a live call, is to have more faith in the vision than your current physical circumstances. And when you have more faith in your vision, and again, what you conceived, in giving more credence to that, in observing that, in giving your attention to that, then whatever's in your physical right now that might tell you, oh, it can't be, or whatever else, again, it will boost your confidence because you get what you think about. What you focus on grows. Where focus goes, energy flows. So if you focus on what's already here and use that as a mechanism to beat yourself up or lower your confidence, that's what you're going to get more of. And this is why a lot of people find themselves in the same situation again and again and again. So again, I use this as an amalgam, but just a saying that helps me in so many moments. Have more faith in your vision than your current physical circumstances. Have faith that if you decide something's going to happen for you and you believe it, it actually will. And again, it will. I've seen this work way too many times to think of it in any other way. When you truly believe and decide something is going to happen, and you have that faith, and everything we've talked about today, it absolutely will come to pass. It's just a matter of time, because the reality or realm of time and space is a denser rate of vibration. That's why. Now, I recommend that you watch this video next if you enjoyed this video today, because this video pairs and synergizes very well with what you just learned. It's going to take everything to the next level, help you believe even more, and just accelerate this whole process.